Old believers of this persuasion rejected not only Peter's barber, tobacco and wine. Everything worldly was not accepted. State laws, military service, passports, money, any power, games, chance and everything that people, not being afraid of God, could invent. Friendship with peace is enmity against God. We must run and hide. This exceptional asceticism was within the reach of only a small number of people. Either poor, or, on the contrary, strong, capable of enduring hermetism. Fate brought both those and others together. Runner's life all the time pressed, drove into the most inaccessible jungle. And now we can see the historical path of 300 years to the forest hut above Abakan. Karp Lykov's mother and father came from the Tyaman land and settled here in the wilderness. Until the 1920s, a small Old Believer community lived 150 kilometers from Abaza. People here had vegetable gardens, livestock, sowed something, fished and beat the beast. This residential hearth, inaccessible in the taiga, was called Lykovs Old Believers. Here Karp Isipovich was born. The capture was communicated with the world, as it was possible to understand, through intermediaries who took away furs and vision boats with poles and brought salt and iron. In the 23rd year, some taiga gang reached the settlement, justifying the community's idea of the sinfulness of the world. Someone was killed, someone was driven away. The borrowing ceased to exist. Sailing along the Abakan, we saw a wasteland overgrown with willow tea, weeds and nettles. 7 or 8 families moved deeper along the Abakan into the mountains, another 150 miles further from Abaza, and began to live in Cairo, a small tributary of the Abakan River. They cut the forest, built huts, set up vegetable gardens, and began to live. The dramatic events of the 1930s, which ruined the fate of people throughout the vast expanse of the country, have sunk, of course, into secret places. They were perceived by the Old Believers as a continuation of the previous persecution of true Christians. Karp Isipovich spoke about those years dully, indistinctly, with apprehension. He made it clear, not without blood. Under these conditions, the Lykovs, Karp Isipovich and his wife Akulina Karpovna decide to retire from the world as far as possible. Taking away in the deserted village everything iron, some household implements, icons, liturgical books. With 2 children, Savin was 11, Natalia was a year old, the family looked for a place deaf, more inaccessible and began to settle in it. The Lykovs themselves do not call themselves runners. Perhaps this word was not used by the runners themselves, or it disappeared over time. But the whole life status of the family is runner. We can't live in peace, rejection of power, worldly laws, papers, worldly food and customs. The candle on the archery stump burned to the ground that evening. The rest of it spread out into a steer and pull, and from this the flame suddenly grew, then often began to blink. Agafia now, and then straightened a wick with a chip. Karp Isipovich was sitting on a couch, clasping his knees with knobby fingers. He listened to my bookish words about the schism attentively, with undisguised curiosity. Eater. In the end, he sighed, pinching his nostrils alternately with his fingers, blew his nose on the floor, and walked over Nikon again. From him, the fornicator, it all began. The door to the hut was left ajar, so that one could breathe somehow, and that the cats could go hunting at night. A ripe, yellow moon was again visible through the crack. Like a melon, said Arafay. The new word melon interested Agafia. Arafay began to explain what it is. The conversation about religion ended with geography. An excursion into Central Asia. At Agafia's request, I drew a melon, a camel, a man in a robe and skullcap on a piece of paper. Lord, Agafia sighed. Before lying down in a ball next to the kitten squealing in the dark, she prayed fervently, and for a long time. I ask you to share these videos in your social networks, using the buttons under the video and subscribe to the channel. I ask you to go and watch other videos about Agafia Lykova, which you now see on the screen in the end screensavers.